long before the great flood washed over the earth, before the rise of kingdoms and the scattering of languages, there was an age of monsters. In that forgotten time, the boundary between heaven and earth was shattered. Angels, once faithful to the Most High, descended, not to protect mankind, but to indulge their desires. Their rebellion gave birth to a legacy of terror that reshaped creation and nearly led to its undoing. From their forbidden unions and unholy experiments arose 4 terrible bloodlines. The Nephilim, wild titans of unimaginable strength. The Gibberim, ruthless warlords born to dominate. The Refame, ghostly entities trapped between life and death. And the hybrids, twisted abominations crafted from corrupted flesh and shattered order. These were no legends. They were the cursed children of celestial betrayal, each more dreadful than the last. They ruled the earth with claw and fire until even the land itself cried out for deliverance. This is the tale of that ancient darkness, of the time when giants walked among men, and of how their reign ended not by sword or flame, but by judgment from above. A story buried in time, but not lost. Nephilim, the firstborn curse. In the forgotten days of the ancient world, long before the Great Flood or the division of tongues, a cosmic betrayal shattered the harmony of heaven. A host of angels, known as the Watchers, were sent to observe the earth, but what they saw stirred desire within them. Enchanted by the radiance of mortal women, they cast off their heavenly vows and descended to the world below. They took wives, taught forbidden knowledge, and sowed chaos. From their union with humanity were born the Nephilim, monstrous beings forged from spirit and flesh, a blend of glory and corruption. These giants were not meant to exist. They were the first abomination, living proof of a divine law broken. Their power was so immense, their presence so unnatural, that even the earth seemed to groan under their weight. The Nephilim were not simply large, they were colossal, titanic beings that defied the natural order. They towered over the tallest trees, their heads brushing the low-hanging clouds. Mountains once thought immovable now seemed small beside their towering forms. With every footstep the ground shook violently, splitting rock and soil as though the earth itself recoiled from their presence. Their strength was incomprehensible. Stone fortresses, once considered unbreakable, crumbled beneath their fists like sandcastles in a storm. Entire forests were torn apart in minutes, trees uprooted and flung aside like twigs. Their wrath diverted rivers and shattered riverbeds, their blows reshaped the land itself. But even more terrifying was their hunger, a ravenous void that knew no end. They devoured animals by the dozen, ravaged livestock, hunted human settlements, and when nothing remained, they turned on one another in savage, primal cannibalism. Wherever they roamed, death followed. Villages vanished in their shadows. Even the sky seemed to darken with swirling clouds as though the heavens mourned their passing. Survivors told of a chilling silence that fell just before their approach, broken only by the trembling of the ground and distant thunderous growls. People fled to mountaintops and hidden caves, but nowhere was safe. The Nephilim could tear down cliffs, bury sanctuaries, and flood valleys with a single step. They had no speech, no reason, no mercy. They did not build, did not dream. They were chaos given form, unholy titans whose only instinct was to destroy. The Nephilim's presence became an unbearable curse upon the land. Their rampage scorched valleys, drained rivers, and stained the soil with blood. The cries of the innocent rose like smoke into the sky. The earth groaned under their burden, and creation itself began to tremble. The heavens, long silent, could no longer ignore the corruption unfolding below. And so judgment came. Not with sword or fire, but with water from the depths and rain from the heavens. A divine flood surged across the world, a cleansing wrath from the Creator himself. In their arrogance, the Nephilim stood defiantly, roaring at the storm-filled sky. But their strength, which once shattered cities, was nothing before the tide of judgment. The great waves rose higher than any mountain, swallowing forests, towers, and temples. The Nephilim, unable to flee or fight, were engulfed, their massive forms crushed beneath the weight of water and stone. The very cities they once shattered became their watery tombs. And so the first giants fell, the cursed children of celestial rebellion. But whispers endure. Some believe their bloodline endures, lurking in the shadows, coursing through the veins of tyrants, warlords, and those who thirst for power beyond mortal bounds. Gibberim, the warlords of the fallen. The fallen angels, still unrepentant after the devastation caused by the Nephilim, were not satisfied with simple destruction. They craved more: control, legacy, permanence. Learning from their past monstrosities, they set out to refine their creations, using forbidden knowledge and perverse wisdom to craft a new breed. This time, their offspring would not be wild and savage beasts, but commanders, beings shaped by precision, power, and purpose. Thus came the Gibberim, whose name meant the mighty ones. These giants were forged for dominion, not mindless ruin. They were born with sharp minds and trained instincts, raised from birth not only to fight, but to rule. The Watchers taught them ancient strategies of warfare, secrets of domination, and the dark arts of sorcery long banned by heaven. They mastered weapons no mortal had ever wielded and constructed empires upon the ashes of fallen civilizations. Where the Nephilim crushed, the Gibberim conquered, building kingdoms with enslaved hands and ruling with fear, brilliance, and blood. They were not just giants. They were tyrants born of celestial rebellion. Unlike the mindless savagery of the Nephilim, the Gibberim were something far more insidious. They were more than destroyers. They were architects of conquest. Where the Nephilim left only ashes and bones, the Gibberim built empires that endured for generations. Guided by the dark intellect of the Watchers and driven by boundless ambition, they reshaped the world in their own image. They carved their fortresses into the hearts of mountains, crafting citadels that scraped the clouds and cast shadows over entire regions. Using celestial knowledge twisted for earthly gain, they forged weapons of unimaginable power. Blades that hummed with dark energy, spears that could pierce stone, and shields that absorbed the very light around them. Their cities stood as monuments to pride, towering black stone citadels and flaming altars, all built on the crushed bodies of enslaved men. The Gibberim enslaved whole nations, turning free peoples into laborers, soldiers, and sacrifices. Driven by whip and flame, humanity was forced to build idols of their tormentors, walls that scraped the sky, and weapons destined to turn against them. Wearing armor crafted from obsidian, iron, and shards of fallen stars, the Gibberim marched at the head of massive armies, legions composed of smaller giants, beastmen, and humans corrupted by fear and dark promises. Their rule was unquestioned. Obedience was justice, mercy was weakness, and brutality was the law. The Gibberim didn't just conquer lands, they rewrote the laws of survival. They altered the very meaning of life and death under their reign. The bravest warriors of men, seasoned in 100 battles, would quail at the sight of a single Gibber, knowing that neither blade nor fire could stop what walked toward them. And still, they hungered for more. When whispers of divine judgment reached the ears of the Gibberim, they did not tremble. They prepared. Puffed up with pride as vast as their empires, they summoned their armies, rallied their champions, and fortified their dark citadels. They believed their walls, hewn from the bones of the earth, could withstand even the fury of heaven. Their sorcerers cast incantations. Their smiths reforged weapons with desperate urgency. The Gibberim, in their arrogance, believed they could wage war against the Creator himself. But when the flood came, it was not with the pace of an army. It came as an unstoppable tide, a wrath that no blade could pierce. The heavens split open and unleashed their fury upon the world. The seas rose with a roar that drowned out even the loudest war drums. Their so-called unbreakable walls crumbled like dry sand in a child's hand. Their armies were swept away. Their weapons dissolved in the chaos. The mighty ones drowned not as warriors, but as monuments of arrogance, their final cries smothered beneath the waves. Today, their cities lie buried beneath oceans and sands, lost to time. Yet their names endure, carved into ruins and ancient scrolls, whispered in fear and reverence, a chilling reminder of what happens to those who challenge the heavens. Refame, the undying ones. The Refame were unlike any of their kin, strange even among giants, and feared for reasons that went beyond brute strength. They were twisted from birth, often deformed in body and deeply unsettling in presence. The ancient texts differ in their accounts of origin. Some claim the Refame were the spawn of fallen Nephilim, born after death from cursed unions, their bloodline further corrupted. Others whisper that they were spirits forced into flesh through dark rituals, abominations born of those who dared to pierce the veil between worlds. But all who speak of them agree on one chilling truth. They were never truly alive. And so, they could never truly die. Their eyes burned with an unnatural fire, their skin cold and pale, draped over bodies that glided with ghost-like grace. These were not mere giants. They were spectres clothed in flesh, hovering in a cursed space between the living and the dead. Wherever they walked, shadows lengthened, the air grew cold, and the line between nightmare and reality began to blur. The Refame were the walking memory of sin, and they would never be at peace. The Refame were not like the Nephilim or the Gibberim. They did not rule by strength, armies, or the blade. Instead, their dominion was carved in silence, in shadow, and in the cold grip of fear. They ruled through terror and madness, needing no armies or fortresses to leave devastation in their wake. They haunted ruins, tombs, and forgotten cities, drawn to places soaked in sorrow and blood. Their presence was often invisible, but always felt, in a sudden chill, a flickering torch, or the eerie sense of unseen eyes watching from beyond the veil. When the Refame passed through a region, disease soon followed, strange fevers, unexplained deaths, crops failing in unnatural silence. Entire villages fell not to violence but to fear, hallucinations, and creeping despair. They spoke in whispers that rode the wind, impossible to trace, yet impossible to escape. Those who heard them often fell into madness, muttering to themselves, clawing at their faces, or wandering into the woods never to return. Some Refame were believed to possess the living, turning once gentle souls into vessels of rage and ruin. Others tormented their victims through dreams, weaving visions so real and horrifying that people awoke screaming, never the same again. Even animals sensed their presence. Dogs would not cross certain thresholds, and birds fell eerily silent in their wake. The priests of the old world, mighty in their rituals and brave in their faith, trembled before the Refame. They were not ghosts in the usual sense, for they had never truly belonged to the world of the living. Their origins were otherworldly, their essence unnatural. No prayer could touch them, no rite could drive them out. The Refame were curses given form, enemies not only of mankind, but even of the heavens themselves. And they endured long after flesh and stone had crumbled. When the great flood surged across the earth, it drowned cities, shattered empires, and swept away the flesh of even the Refame. The roaring waters tore their misshapen bodies apart, leaving only lifeless husks behind. But unlike others, death did not free them, for they were never truly alive. Their spirits endured, clinging to the remnants of the old world like a stain that could not be washed away. Driven into the bones of mountains, into buried temples and cursed ruins, the Refame vanished between realms, unseen but never truly gone. To this day, whispers persist in ancient places, of voices echoing from tombs sealed for millennia, of eyes glowing in darkness, watching, waiting. Their curse was never death. It was endless existence, an eternal sentence to roam the shadows, neither fully spirit nor fully departed. Hybrids, the forbidden beasts. Drunk with power and pride, the Watchers, the fallen angels, sank deeper into rebellion. The chaos they had unleashed through the Nephilim and Gibberim only deepened their hunger to dominate all of creation. In their arrogance, they dared to reshape life itself. Their gaze turned not just to mankind, but also to the beasts of the land, the birds of the sky, and the creatures of the sea. Using forbidden knowledge and dark sorcery, they began fusing living beings, mixing human with beast, beast with demon, and spirit with flesh. From this unholy fusion came the hybrids, creatures that defied nature, logic, and the divine order. These were no ordinary giants. They were malformed aberrations, bearing multiple eyes, twisted limbs, scaled wings, and voices that shattered sanity. They were not creations. They were corruptions, abominations that mocked the very intention of life. In the hybrids, the Watchers had gone too far, crafting not just terror, but a blasphemy against the Creator himself. The hybrids were the most terrifying of all the creations birthed by the fallen Watchers, not because of their strength alone, but because of their unpredictable and unnatural nature. They were unstable and volatile, neither fully beast nor man, neither entirely spirit nor flesh. Unlike the Nephilim who destroyed with brute force, or the Gibberim who ruled with dark intelligence, the hybrids embodied something far more dangerous, pure, unfiltered chaos. Some had human-like bodies, but faces of lions, wolves, or eagles, with mouths full of jagged teeth that defied nature. Others had 6 or more arms, some ending in claws, some in hands with too many fingers. Some had oily, shimmering scales or wings that burned like living fire, their forms constantly shifting, as if even the laws of nature rejected them. They had no thought, no reason, no hierarchy. They did not build, speak, or plan. They spread like a plague, leaving nothing but motion and mutilation behind them. They overran forests, rivers, valleys, and deserts alike, killing everything in their path, not from hunger or hatred, but as if chaos itself demanded it. Even the Nephilim and Gibberim avoided the hybrids, instinctively sensing something deeply wrong in their presence. Worst of all, these creatures reproduced not through birth, but by corruption. Their presence twisted the land, warped animals into monsters, and poisoned water into black sludge. Wherever they went, creation unraveled, and the world bent under the weight of something it was never meant to carry. The hybrids were beyond the reach of swords, fire, or any weapon forged by mortal hands. Neither man nor beast could stand against them. They were too chaotic, too twisted, the very embodiment of unnatural creation. Only the cleansing power of the flood, sent from the heavens, held the strength to purge them from the face of the earth. As oceans surged and skies split apart, the hybrids shrieked in rage and confusion, a storm of tortured voices filling the air. Valleys flooded, forests vanished, and many of the hybrids were dragged beneath the waves, their forms thrashing before being silenced forever. Yet some escaped, slithering into deep caves, diving into uncharted ocean trenches, or vanishing into stormy skies, their forms lost in cloud and lightning. But even death may not be the end. Legends still linger, of strange creatures spotted in remote wildernesses, with too many eyes and movements that defy natural law. They say these things watch in silence, waiting, and so the question remains, did every hybrid perish? Or do some still hide, biding their time until the world forgets they ever existed? The earth was cleansed by the flood. The giants perished, and the watchers were chained in the depths of the abyss, but their legacy was never fully erased. The Nephilim live on in the tales of gods and titans. The Gibberim inspire stories of conquerors and cursed kings. The Refame whisper in dreams and haunted places. The hybrids remain hidden in shadows, beneath the skin of beasts, waiting. And so, in the days of Enoch, humanity trembled under 4 monstrous bloodlines. They brought ruin, despair, and divine wrath. But perhaps the greatest terror of all is that they may return.